So welcome everybody to room 2. My name is Natasha Kitano and I'm the host of this room today. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started with our presentations today. The chat function has been muted and you will need to use the Q&A function to contact me, or the chat function, maybe it is working. We have created a Padlet for the conference and we invite you to introduce yourself on it and to connect with other researchers. So I'm just putting that link into the chat for you now. Each speaker will speak for approximately 15 minutes and that will be followed by 5 minutes of question time. Please keep your mic muted, but we do encourage you to keep your camera on. However, be mindful that this session is being recorded. And for the speakers, I will put a message in the chat at about 14 minutes to let you know that you have 1 minute left. Also, the meeting room host, myself, will read out a selection of questions for the presenters to answer. But if you have a question that hasn't been asked, you're welcome to email us and we will forward your questions to the conference speaker for their reply. So I'll put that link into the chat as well. And so I'm going to hand over to, I've lost my slide now. I'm going to, well, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Rachel Spronken-Smith from the University of Otago in New Zealand. The theme for Rachel's presentation is Sustainable Transformation of Universities and Innovative Research Focus using a case study approach. And her presentation title is Preparing Doctoral Graduates to be Global Citizens. Okay, over to you, please, Rachel.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Natasha. And I assume you can see my slide okay?
Yes.
Great. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Welcome and thank you for the opportunity to present at this fabulous event. I'm just really annoyed I have to run off to a board event soon. I'm going to take us on a journey considering what we are preparing PhD graduates for and how we might do this. So as we think about that, I would like you to use the chat to put in some ideas about what is the purpose of the PhD. So if you can pop that through, that would be great. Oh, can't you see the slides? Is that right?
Yeah, we can't see them, Rachel.
Oh,
I can see them.
Okay, that's weird.
Rachel, I will make you co-host.
Okay.
Let's see if that helps.
Oh, yes, because I'm getting a message saying it can only be seen by the host and co-hosts.
There we go. Sorry, that's my fault. Sorry. Can you all see them now?
Yeah.
No.
I can't, no.
Maybe Rachel stop viewing and then start again. Because I have made you co-host now. So if you stop sharing.
Stop share
and then try again.
Try that again. Okay, how are we now?
I think because the meeting is in focus mode, only hosts and co-hosts will be able to see videos and slides.
Right.
I'm going to stop the focus mode. How about now, everybody?
And yeah, can you see that now? Well, I'll stop and start again. Oh no. Yes, yes, I'm getting participants can now see the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Focus mode won't let you use them.
All right. We're in business. So if you could use the chat and just pop in some ideas about what you think the purpose of doing a PhD is. Why do we do it? What is it educating you for? So just pop some ideas through chat. That would be great. Okay, research training. Yeah, contribute to original knowledge. Okay, as you're thinking about that, I'm just going to share discovering new things, developing new skills, project research training. Okay, I'm going to share some things from the literature and past sort of workshops I've run with you. So Certainly, as was mentioned, well, actually, I don't know if we have seen that yet, which is interesting. Training for academia often comes up, as does training the next generation of researchers. So definitely about research. Some people have proposed that it's for intellectual and emotional growth and pleasure. Others have talked about intellectual virtues such as cognition and personal resourcefulness. Educating for contribution to society and the workplace. And the one I'm particularly interested in is Maurice Enrad's idea about to become global citizens who can conduct socially responsible research. So if we follow that idea on a bit, if we believe our PhD graduates should become global citizens, is it just being about socially responsible? Or should they be able to contribute to the betterment of society and the planet? And so these terms, VUCA and Barney, which I'm sure you're well aware of, have mostly been used in a business context. But for me, with my geographical background and environmental background, I immediately relate the terms to our fragile world. So can we foster attributes that help equip PhD graduates for this contribution? Drawing on the work of Janine Senecal and colleagues, they looked at doctoral graduate attributes. These are the qualities, skills and competencies that graduates possess having completed their PhD. And you can see there's a range of categories here around these attributes. And the one that really touches a little on global citizenship is their notion of active citizenship. And really, it was when I was at a conference in Hanover a few years ago now, pre-COVID, my last bit of travel pre-COVID was to a doctoral education conference where we came up with a set of recommendations around doctoral education. And number 7 was around developing original, responsible and ethical thinkers and the generation of new and original ideas and knowledge. But I think we need to go a bit further. So Senecal's ideas of global citizenship were around being aware of injustice and inequality and having a social justice-oriented disposition. However, I quite like O'Brien's framing of global citizenship, which included 3 things. Digital literacy, that's the being able to be competent in the use of information and communication technology and being able to communicate across a range of media. Cultural literacy or intelligence, and that's sensitivity, empathy and openness to other cultures, valuing other perspectives and divergent worldviews. And then there was socio-communicative literacy, which was really about being able to collaborate with people from different diverse worldviews and cultural or philosophically different backgrounds. So it's really about teamwork across very diverse teams. But I noticed what was missing in that list of attributes was environmental literacy, which I added in some work back in 2013. So I do think PhD graduates should be aware of the principles that govern natural systems and the impacts of human activity, as well as having the ability to make a positive contribution to sustainability throughout their lives. So in the last several years, I've been researching the development of graduate attributes in PhDs, but it's only recently that I've become more interested in the development of global citizenship attributes in doctoral students. And that was mostly after that meeting at Hanover. So I decided to revisit some data I had collected as part of a Fulbright project where we were looking at the career preparedness of PhD graduates. So just a little dive into this project. So that project really had, one of the aims was to look at whether PhD graduates developed a holistic set of graduate attributes during their doctoral study and how those attributes were applied in the workplace, really with the motivation of is better support needed. But later, when I went back to look at this data, I was really mining it for the development and application of global citizenship attributes. But bear in mind, that was not the original emphasis. Otherwise, I probably would have asked quite different questions and used quite a different approach. So this study was a comparative study between the US and New Zealand. There were 3 universities, 2 in the US, 1 in New Zealand. We had survey data from 136 PhD graduates from a couple of different cohorts. We had to carefully choose those because the US Council of Graduate Schools were already running career surveys, and we weren't able to overlap their surveys. We were looking at graduates from science and HAS, that's humanity and social science disciplines. And then we had interviews with 21 graduates. So it was an explanatory sequential mixed method study. And the data were collected back in 2018. In terms of the survey respondents, of the 136, we had 31 from the first US university, 53 from the second, and 52 from the New Zealand. The disciplinary areas were reasonably evenly split, slightly more in sciences. We had slightly more females completing the survey, and most of them were domestic students. And then you can just see we had 12 interviewees from the US and 9 from New Zealand. In terms of employment, there was quite a high rate of employment, 94% were employed, but it was noticeable that only 23% were in tenured or tenure track positions. And this was a little surprising because we had quite a large number of our graduates had graduated about 8 years prior to when that survey was done. A further 33% were in these fixed term academic positions. And then we had a few working in professional academic positions like research managers or career advisors. And then quite a chunk working outside academia, so in government, and particularly in government, and also private sector for profit. We used an existing survey from the UK Higher Education Academy about postgraduate research experience, which has a list of attributes. And I've just circled the ones that I thought were most closely aligned with global citizenship. So global perspective, cultural understanding, and environmental literacy. And in the survey, we asked people to say to what extent did they feel that the PhD had encouraged the development of these, and to what extent did they apply them. Now, I was going to get you to do this, but because we have lost a few minutes, I'll just dive on into what we found. Okay, so if we look, this plot is of all these attributes with the ones we're particularly interested in circled. And if it was 0 in here or 1, that would mean that it wasn't developed much at all, whereas 5 would be something that was really strongly developed during their doctoral study. So first thing to note is that across these 3 universities, with quite different contexts, particularly nationally, actually quite similar patterns of the development of graduate attributes. And one could speculate, I'm not really going to talk about it, but teamwork for me is not well developed. And yet this is a key thing we know we need for these interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary conversations. Also quite disappointing, some of these global citizenship attributes were not really that well developed, particularly environmental literacy. And then if we look at the application of these in the workplace, again, something that struck me was how closely aligned the rating of most of these attributes was around in the workplace, no matter what that workplace was. Yet the global citizenship attributes, again, there's a bit of a gap here, bit of difference rather between the universities, and actually not rating that highly in terms of application in the workplace, particularly from students from that USU1. And so if we look at the difference between those two, development and application, we can see that there's a gap. And we might say this is a proxy for career readiness. So the bigger the gap, the less ready they might be for that transition into that career. So with the global citizenship ones, we can see there's a gap here, except for environmental literacy, which is disappointingly low, both in the development and the application. So the graduates thought they had good opportunities for research skill development and oral communication and teaching, but not enough for some of these other attributes. And actually, there was really nothing explicit about global citizenship. So we asked them in the interviews about this with quite different views. So Marie here said, well, they're important, but really I'm here to be a physics expert, not something else. So for her, not important. Simon, on the other hand, was saying, well, actually, we don't need to worry about this. It's a generational thing. Millennials already have it, don't need to teach it. Whereas Omar was sort of in the middle, saying actually it needs to be systematized a little better, needs to be embedded in that program in the department. So there was a high employment rate, there was satisfaction and support for developing as a researcher, and the desire for better support for some of those transferable skills and attributes. But what about global citizenship attributes for being in this fragile world? Should we insist on the fact that they should be developed in all doctoral graduates? I know I have a specific audience here who will be getting these things directly through their study, but what about English majors or philosophy or chemistry or commerce? So how do we, and should we, develop these attributes in all PhD candidates so that they can become a world citizen in a global environment? And so I would welcome your thoughts through chat in particular about ways that if you think we should be developing these things, what sort of experiences, perhaps outside doctoral study or alongside doctoral study, might help develop these sorts of attributes around cultural understanding and environmental literacy and having that global perspective. So I'll leave you with that to feed through chat. Yes, so if you can think of some ways that perhaps we could develop these sorts of attributes within the program, or ideas on whether they should or shouldn't be developed. And I'll open it up for discussion.
Fantastic, Rachel. Thank you so much. I enjoyed that so much. And really, it's such an awesome idea, and especially well, let's see what everybody else thinks. Are there any questions that we have for Rachel? You are able to put your mic on or put it into the chat for her.
Perhaps while you're thinking about those questions, some of my research has, yes, perhaps we can link clearly to the discipline's PhD projects. Yes, should align with that sustainable development goals. That's a really nice idea. And I think people who are perhaps not in those sustainability conversations more generally may be surprised to see how broad and encompassing they are to actually align with that. And actually, here's a little plug for an online course called 23 Things International, which is a research and development course that's being run next year, sort of global initiative. And in that, as people sign up, we had over 500 participants this year. We are actually going to ask them all to identify the sustainable development goal that their research most closely aligns with. So, yeah, great suggestion. The other thing is getting involved in internships, or some, like I know the University of British Columbia has a fantastic public scholar initiative where they get PhD candidates to work in a project with somebody external to the university on some sort of community initiative. And so it's running alongside their PhD, but they can, through that, develop some fantastic citizenship skills. Also outreach, other opportunities, so which are often available to students. Sometimes supervisors get grumpy if they take time out to go and engage in outreach activities, but we need a cultural shift in supervisors to be encouraging that sort of activity, because we know it's fantastic for developing those attributes.
To become global citizens. Fantastic, Rachel. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we did have that little hiccup at the start. But if there are any questions, please send them through and I will forward them on to Rachel. Great. Thank you so much for being here today. It's lovely to see you.
Okay, thank you.